Yes, we are live now. Good morning and welcome to today's hearing. My name is Councillor Rima Baklini and I shall be chairing the meeting. My colleagues, Councillor Anthony Kelly, Councillor John Ball and I comprise today's subcommittee. Richard Plummer, who is the clerk to the subcommittee, will be minuting the meeting, and Alison Luff is the legal advisor. You will have all received or seen the agenda pack within which is contained the licensing officer's report with details of the application in section 1. To confirm, we are dealing with the application for a new premises license for Oxygen Free Jumping, Vision Industrial Park, Kendall Avenue, Acton, W30AF. We note there have been 3 objections to the application. 1 from a responsible authority and 2 from interested parties. In accordance with procedure, I shall invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. I will also invite those who have made representations or objections to make the representations, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the committee democratic services officer, will retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing within 5 working days. If the panel cannot reach a decision today, you will be notified in writing within 5 working days of the panel's decision. May I now please ask the premises representative to introduce themselves, please?
Chair, my name is Alan Thomas. I am the solicitor acting for the applicant, and I have with me Karen Wood, who's operations director. I think that's your full title, Karen, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
And Nathan Sabir, who you've heard isn't the DPS yet, but he is already the general manager, and he will take over as DPS in the next couple of weeks. So I thought it'd be helpful for him to be here as well.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, can you please present your application?
Thank you, Chair. These premises were previously licensed until a couple of years ago when the license lapsed. It was due to a company restructuring. As you know, in some circumstances, a license can lapse. And that's what happened in this case. So we are reinstating the license on the same terms as those that were previously in force. Karen, who you've just met, is a bit of a hospitality stalwart. She's been in hospitality for over 25 years, has been at senior positions at restaurant and hospitality venues. And Nathan is also an experienced general manager. Karen joined Oxygen Free Jumping during COVID. We have rebranded Oxygen during COVID, and we relaunched in about May 2022. Nathan is our new, or will be our new DPS, as you've heard. He's got a plethora of experience, and we're happy to have a condition on the license that a mobile number, it would be him normally, but a mobile number of the duty manager is available at all times. I can draft that condition and I will put it in the chat. We've reached out to the environmental health officer, who's also made a representation, Miss Brenda. I think unless she's on the call, we can get hold of her. We think she might have moved departments, or that's what the team said. So we haven't been able to speak to pollution again, I'm afraid. I hope that won't be of any consequence, for the reason that we are proposing to offer a condition that there will be a sound limiter installed. Well, one already has been installed, but it needs to be set in conjunction with the assistance of environmental health. And I'm just popping that condition into the chat for you to have a look at when either now or during your deliberations. Effectively, what it means is that the sound limiter that we have installed will be made tamper-proof, and environmental health will have to set it at a level, or we will ask environmental health to set it at a level that is acceptable. Now, a little bit about OFJ. They are a trampoline park, majority of customers obviously being children and families. They're aiming to be the first choice for family activities, with always fun at the heart of what they do. They obviously cater for schools, groups, homeschoolers. They also run peaceful SEN sessions twice a week, as well as play sessions, etc., for toddlers and carers. The issue, it would appear from the representations, and this shouldn't sound like a criticism because it's not, but the issue is the one of the music. There's not any issue in terms of the sale of alcohol or any other licensable activities. It's the sound of the PA system. So I'm going to focus my presentation upon that. There was a noise abatement service node served in 2015, which is obviously quite a while ago now. Environmental health say that that's still valid. If that's right, then of course that's another reason why there is an additional control in respect of this application, because obviously we can't breach that because we would be prosecuted. Since Karen took over in 2021, she's not aware of any further complaints. And that's consistent with what the representations say. There was a noise complaint in 2021, but we are not aware of any since. And it would appear from the representations that there wasn't anything between 2015 and 2021 either. And the reason for that probably is that we instituted a management plan, which has mitigated issues of noise and other matters. So that management plan is still in place, and I'm happy to share that with you if you need to see it. The nuance of this application, as you'll be aware, Chair, is that recording music is a deregulated activity under the Licensing Act. In respect of premises licensed for the sale of alcohol, or indeed workplaces, regulated entertainment is not licensable between 8 AM and 11 PM for capacities of less than 500 and well less than 500. Mm-hmm. So that's the difficulty with the recorded music issue, because it's not a regulated activity. Neither is the use of the PA. So that the PA, the microphone, is mainly used for making safety announcements. Get off the trampoline, do this, do that, there's a fire alarm, etc. That's not regulated either, because it's not entertainment. That all said, because notwithstanding it's deregulated or not licensable, we still want to address the issues that have been quite properly raised in the representations. And we've done that by offering the sound limiter condition. So as you've heard, we will ask environmental health to visit the premises and set that to a satisfactory level. That we think can probably be done over the next couple of weeks, as soon as we can find which environmental health officer is now dealing with it. So, Chair, that was a bit of a gallop through of it. I'm sure there'll be some questions, but in summary, even though the provision of regulated entertainment is deregulated, we are still seeking to address the issues that have been raised, and I hope that assists. Karen, is there anything more that you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Thank you, Alan.
I'm sure there'll be some questions, Chair. We're happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Thomas, you'll now be answering questions from the Noise and Nuisance Officer, Mr. Murphy, and from the objectors and from panel councillors. I'll start with the Noise and Nuisance Officer. Mr. Murphy, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Alan. Thanks for the information provided. Can I just get an understanding this noise management plan? Because in April, obviously, the indicated there might have been some confusion about Alicia Drender. Obviously, Alicia Drender, I think we've been fairly clear about, she left Ealing Council on the 18th of April. But we haven't had sight of that noise management plan yet, and we were expecting it to be sent through to us. In fact, the impression we were given was that this hearing was adjourned because a noise management plan was going to be provided to us. Has it been sent through?
I can probably share it on the screen. There it's been in place since 2015. So it was discussed and agreed with Environmental Health after the abatement notice was certain. It's been in place since then, so it's not new. What we actually did between now and over the adjourned period, we've looked into beefing up the sound limiter and getting it set. So in fact, an acoustic consultant is actually on site today. So I'm sorry if that's confusing.
No, the impression I had was
isn't
that
new as such. It's antecedent.
I'm just going back to obviously the email exchange you were having with Alicia at the time, because the impression I got was that in early April, those conversations were happening, that the acoustic consultant was doing that piece of work and that we would have sight of it prior to this hearing so we could have some meaningful engagement. And I'm disappointed that hasn't happened. Can I just confirm as well, in terms of before you ceased trading in or around 2021, what were the previous opening hours? Can you just remind us?
They were the same as we've applied for.
Okay. It feels, in terms of what time was the venue habitually being used to during that time prior to 2021?
Well, Karen wasn't there then, unfortunately, and nor was Nathan. I don't know the answer to that. Karen may know the answer. I think it's fair to say, or I'm speculating, that it wasn't necessarily open until 11 o'clock, but there will be occasions when it will have been open until 11 o'clock. Is that right, Karen? And is there anything you can add in terms of the acoustic report or noise management plan?
Yes, certainly. So historically, well, currently now we operate from, standardly we operate from about 9 a.m. We allow customers on site. There's usually someone from the management team on park from between 8:30 in the morning. And we run through normally until 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and then the team obviously finish and close up. But there are definitely situations historically where they've done events, private hire, smaller events and group bookings. So less frequent, but definitely where they've traded later into the evening as well. In terms of the noise management as well, we have we've got like my technical directors on site today with the external acoustic specialists, because we've had sound engineers on site as well. And actually we've just had access gaining access to some of the limiters to do the testing as well. So that is happening today. And unfortunately, that is what delayed things, because apparently they've on multiple occasions sent kit to site, which hasn't arrived, which does tend to happen in the industrial estate, unfortunately. So that's why it was delayed, is that I just wanted to ensure that we were meeting and we could, as Alan said, beef up the sound controls in the park, because I appreciate it's a warehouse. So we really need to make sure that we're limiting the sound inside. So we've also had someone inside checking the direction of the speakers as well.
Karen, can you confirm for me, in terms of, it's certainly from looking at some of the way the business is being promoted online, it looks like quite a different style of business in some ways. Can you give me a sense of what time you expect closing to habitually be?
Habitually, I expect the last customers to have left the building pre 9 o'clock. Standardly, I think the exceptions would be later in the evening. As you see, our core customer is between 5 and 11 years old. We do go a bit older than that with teens, but they are usually visiting with parents. We do some corporate hires as well. And, in terms of the sale of alcohol, we won't be selling it to anyone who's participating in an activity until after that activity has finished. And that would really be parents, guardians, and then other adults.
And obviously, yes, you've made that last but obvious and important point. It won't be anyone under 18, and you've got a challenge policy in place as well.
100%.
And in terms of plans for development of the business, in terms of, you talk about running some corporate events, presumably those are adult only events, the corporate events that you'll be running?
Yeah, but I will say, we've got 12 parks across the country now, and that's not our core base. That would really be, and they're usually corporate events are during the day. We just didn't want to restrict doing evening ones as well. And we have done the odd evening one, but it's not our core business. So it wouldn't be regular every day by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, well, thanks for that information. Chair, I'm very happy to aware that we've got some of the objectors on the call, and I'll give them an opportunity to put questions.
I've got the noise management plan. If you want to drop your email in the chat, I can send that to you directly or afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. I'll come back to that. Thank you.
I'll go now to the objectors. Mr. David Gardiner, would you like to ask any questions to the applicant and to the solicitor, please?
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. One is...
Can you please raise your voice? We can hardly hear you.
I'll speak up. Is that better?
A little bit better. Yeah, thanks.
I'd like to ask if the noise limiter is currently in operation, or is that in future?
No, there's been a fault with it. It's the problem. Not historically, but at the moment, that's why the engineer's there at the moment, because we are missing the key to set it at an appropriate level. Karen can expand on that, but no, it's not fully operational at the moment, although it has been in the past.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, Kendall Avenue is effectively in a residential area because it backs onto Saxon Drive just across the central line. So you have people living in residential accommodation not very far away from oxygen free jumping. I'd like to know if OFJ have conducted any surveys or measurements over the last year to identify the noise level from their operation in those residential areas, because we have noticed it in our garden. It has affected us, and I'm not sure that OFJ are aware of that fact.
Look, it's good to be aware of it, and I think the good thing about this process is obviously things that we might not have been aware of, we will now be aware of through your good self. As part of the setting of the sound limiter exercise, an assessment will be made either by our own acoustic consultant or by environmental health. What normally happens is environmental health will go to the nearest noise sensitive premises, and they will have a colleague at OFJ, and they will turn the music up, turn it down until it's at an acceptable level. So that's the purpose of the noise limiter condition.
Thank you. And my third question is, what precautions and steps will be taken if alcohol is to be sold to avoid people congregating in the car parking area and causing a noise nuisance at the end of business?
Karen or Nathan? Karen, do you want to deal with that point operationally?
Yes, I can answer that. I think we are going to not serve copious amounts of alcohol, because that would be irresponsible of us as premises license holders. We will ensure that I'm quite happy to staff somebody outside to make sure that the area clears quite quickly. We don't currently have an issue with that. And I appreciate we're talking about adding the alcohol, but we haven't really had, as far as I'm aware, any issues with people congregating outside. And to your point as well, I'd be more than happy to provide the contact number of the manager on site at any point. So if there are any issues and concerns, we'd 100% want to jump on top of that, because we really want to be an active part of our community and add value, not create a situation where people are not comfortable.
Thank you. No further questions from me.
Thank you, Mr. Gardiner. Mr. Banks, do you have any questions, please?
Hello. I don't have very much to add to what David has already asked. I had one question about the so with regard to the use of the PA system. It was mentioned that's primarily for sort of procedural announcements and fire alarms and that sort of thing. Is it? Could you clarify whether it, is it used for other things? I mean, there have been some days. I mean, sort of last summer, for example, I think, or at least one summer, it will be regularly every day. If we wanted to sit out in the garden, we'd be it was I mean, not constant, but I mean, it was much more often than I would imagine if it were simply being used for kind of shepherding people in and out and so on. And I mean, it seemed almost like more of a sort of MC kind of thing going on. So could you I'd appreciate some clarification on that point. Thank you.
Karen, do you want to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the way that we do our bookings, we do have sessions. People can book every 30 minutes for a session. And what we do is at the end of it, so to your point, absolutely, every 30 minutes, we are then calling people to leave the park and leave the area. So with wristbands for coming off. So I think it's absolutely key to your point that we make sure that that isn't impacting on you. So, and if that noise is traveling as well, then again, to Alan's point, I think it's really important that we get it assessed so it's not impacting on you. And that we, you know, there's two types of limiters from what I've learned over the last few weeks. There's ones that just cut it off. And that can almost be, I don't think that's not the direction we want to go. We want to have one that immediately drops the sound level, because otherwise it's like a staccato continually cutting in and out. So we're looking at one that reduces the sound level, and I think absolutely working with yourselves and environmental health to ensure that we've got it at the right level, that it's not causing a negative impact.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned, of course, the effect of the limiter is that everything goes through it.
Mr. Banks, do you have any more questions?
Thank you. Just that if it's possible for us to be involved, or if we can help with sort of, you know, volunteering to kind of be the site that, or one of the sites that you're assessing from when you're testing the noise level, we'd be very happy to be involved with that.
If you want to, you can either put, because I think your representation might be redacted in terms of your personal details. If you want to either email the licensing officer or the environmental, if you want to email your details to Mr. Roberts, the Democratic Services Officer, he'll make sure that we've got your details.
Thanks very much. Cool. Yeah,
right.
no more questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move now to my panel councillors. Councillor Ball, do you have any questions to ask the applicants?
Thank you, Chair. Well, so first I'll just declare that I've been to the premises as a parent of a child, so you know, I'm familiar with it. And to my taste, the music is quite loud, and there are quite frequent announcements. So as well as the 30-minute wristband ones, there are also announcements of sort of competitions for the kids and things which are more frequent, sort of. So I think there's sort of an announcement about every 10 minutes or something. But yeah, the question really is, when the limiter was initially installed, how was the level set at that point? Was it, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure we know the answer to that, because Karen only joined the business in 2021. But so I'm going to ask Karen that question in just a moment. But of course, that with the exception of the 2021 complaint, it seems that it's been working in the main anyway. But Karen, can you assist in terms of what the historical position was?
Yeah, I'm not fully informed of the historical position, but I know that I'm actually using the acoustic surveyors who are specialists to do the same survey again, because they did the original. And then also with our technical director, we're also using another music consultant to ensure that we set the right decibel level. We wouldn't be setting it above 85 decibels. But again, when they do the testing, they will test the noise inside the park, outside the park. And to your point, I'll also speak to them about if we can test it from the road or the gardens on the road, if you're happy to do that as well. Just to make sure, because also, you know, at the end of the day, we don't want the things that are too loud, because that has an impact on our customers as well.
Yes. Well, that's right. As I say, as a customer, I do think it's a bit loud. But also, I guess the follow-up question would be to Mr. Thomas. Can you really assert that there isn't a problem if residents are concerned that the noise is too loud in their gardens, even if they haven't repeatedly complained over the period, if people have complained some years ago and the problems persist?
It's always a difficult one, isn't it? And look, I'm not saying that people haven't heard anything at all. I'm simply saying two things. A, that there don't appear to have been any complaints about it, which perhaps shows it's not on the nuclear level of being a problem. Secondly, of course, unfortunately not by my making, but the making of the regulators, this is a deregulated activity. But thirdly, and most importantly, we are seeking to address that with having the noise limiter set with environmental health.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bikini, and thank you, Mr. Thomas, and people speaking objection. I want to learn a little bit more about your alcohol offer, because it's a new venture, I understand, to be serving alcohol. I mean, you know, the less alcohol people drink, the less inhibited they are, and the less likely they are to make some noises, and that's just a human thing. So you've got the mandatory challenge 25, and I understand, you know, you're not there for late teenagers to have a 21st birthday party. I do appreciate what it is you're trying to achieve, but I mean, how will you specifically meet the challenges of too many people drinking too late? Have you considered the alcohol by volume? And and obviously the dispersal, and perhaps when you have private parties where you've got a number of people, whether you would consider SIA staff, particularly relating to dispersal. So I see Karen nodding, so hopefully
I'm not sure she's nodding as being in agreement. I mean, we've dealt with the
she was it certainly understood my question. Yeah.
Can I expand on it? Firstly, Karen's already said that there'll be a member of staff in the car park just dealing with dispersal, particularly if they have events. I don't think necessarily that needs to be an SIA. That is quite a business cost. And SIA can sometimes give out the wrong message, but we've already confirmed that we will have somebody there managing the situation. As far as I'm aware, and sorry to be slightly legalistic about this, but I don't think the sale of alcohol per se and dispersal has been raised as a concern. I think it's mainly focused on the regulated entertainment. I am, however, going to answer all of your questions, or Karen is. One thing that Karen did say, of course, is that you can't buy alcohol if you're trampolining. That would be most unwise. So the alcohol tends to be, your colleague might be able to confirm this or not, the alcohol tends to be consumed by people who are either spectating or after they finish their activity. So it's a relatively small dwell time. You don't go there like you would go to the pub or to a restaurant. You might have a glass of wine or a beer whilst you're watching, or after the activity. The premises was licensed for the sale of alcohol before, of course, until a license lapsed. Karen, in terms of one question that I haven't answered is the volume of the alcohol, which I presume means the ABV. I presume you don't do anything like happy hours or anything like that. Do you? What sort of range of alcohol do you do? I take it it's on the. Hard stuff.
It is. It's not strong alcohol. I mean, we're not looking to get people intoxicated by any stretch of the imagination, because especially if people have got children in the care, we have a duty of care to ensure that a large amount of alcohol is not consumed on our premises. And we're not, to Alan's point, we're not a pub or a bar. The cafe and our food and beverage offer is ancillary to our core offer. And that's always what it's going to be. We're not going to turn ourselves into something where people come to us for alcohol. We're currently in the process across our business of training everybody, all of our managers, on personal license courses so that they're fully aware. We will fully train our team. All of our team work with radios anyway, because obviously our health and safety focus has to be very serious, and we take it very seriously. So if there were any concerns, our park teams can contact anybody in the business very quickly to gain assistance. So we're not going to be doing cocktails 2-for-1s on alcoholic drinks or anything like that, because it's a nice thing to have, I think, to be able to have a beer or a glass of wine in a trampoline park if you're a customer and an adult, after you've jumped or while you're watching your children. But yeah, it's certainly not our core offer.
Thanks, Alan, Karen, and Chair. The last bit about training people for personal, that was going to be my follow-up question, and you've answered that. So that's really encouraging. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I'm now going to invite Paul Murphy to present their case.
Thank you. I think we've probably covered quite a few aspects already on this. I mean, what I would just like to say first, in terms of the feedback that we've had today, it certainly seems to be a well-intentioned application, and the applicants who've presented today obviously have a lot of experiences with managing other venues very professionally, and they've presented well and have answered the questions openly, so that's appreciated. So thank you to them for that. The primary concern I have here is of the fundamentals of the site itself. And some of the engagement we've had around those fundamentals up to this point, which I'll come on to in a second. Fundamentally, this is a warehouse. It's essentially a predominantly steel structure, and it will act like an amplifier. So music and amplified voices within it will be amplified outside. And we've witnessed this previously, and we've proven it to be a problem, to the point that it has been a statutory nuisance. And I know we've heard about measures have been put in place since then, but we also know that in 2021, noise that was considered problematic was witnessed from outside, from a resident's garden, and some engagement happened with the management around that. So we know there is a problem with the fundamentals of this building itself for this use. There's some really great ambitions here around, which we've heard today, around acoustic assessments, around testing and meter calibrating. And that's great, but my concern is none of this seems to have happened yet. So we're talking about ambitions. We're not talking about things that are actually in place. We're not talking about something that we can review today. We're not talking about opportunities we've had to do noise assessments up to now, or noise exercises up to now. We asked for a noise management plan to be provided to us in April. It hasn't arrived, and today we're being offered an historic noise management plan from 2015. So I have concerns about that. The other concern I have is what I would, I suppose, characterize as a bit of a shift in tone around what audience this venue is targeting. And it's obviously reassuring to hear from Karen that other similar venues associated with this brand are predominantly very much child-focused events, which will end predominantly in the early evening. But I am concerned about what does appear to be a shift towards hospitality, and I suppose maybe more adult orientated hospitality. And I haven't heard anything today around conditions that might be in place to prevent that from happening either. So those are the primary concerns. In terms of the residents today who've attended, and what we've heard about the noise that is audible in Saxon Drive, particularly around amplified music and those very regular amplified announcements. Appreciate their safety announcements, but that can become very, very irritating and disturbing, and we know historically that those kind of announcements, particularly if they're going to be going on into the evening, particularly if that amplified music is going to be going on into the evening, then the aspects of that will become a statutory nuisance are in play and are of concern to me. Yes, we have an abatement notice in place. Yes, it is still valid, and we would absolutely be looking to take enforcement action under that if indeed we witness further events of nuisance. Obviously, we're very keen to work with the management of this site around their noise management plan. My concern, I suppose, is an adjournment was requested by the applicant, and we are now 2 months later. We're on the 7th of June, and we're hearing that there is somebody on site today working on aspects of the sound meter, the sound limiter. It feels like we don't have the information in front of us to do that work, and now it's being passed on to, well, once a license is granted, we'll obviously work with the environmental health team around that. Obviously, my team are on hand and very happy to help with that, but we've been on hand for the last 2 months and very happy to help with that, and previous to that too. So I'm just concerned that we haven't been engaged with in a meaningful way up to now, and I feel that doesn't bode well for the future management of this site. Those are the key points I wanted to make, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Banks and Mr. Gardiner, would you like to add anything? It's your chance to speak if you want to add anything to the case.
I think we've covered. I think everything that we were going to have has been covered. David, do you want to?
I think I'd just like to reiterate the point that just because there hasn't been a formal complaint made doesn't mean that there hasn't been any impact to residents over the last 2 years or so. And from where we sit, you know, we're in a situation where our enjoyment of our garden is periodically disrupted as it is, and we would be very unhappy if anything were to make that any worse. So while we welcome what we've heard about the noise limiter and the plan, I think the proof will be when that's actually installed and we have an opportunity to see if that has actually abated the noise that we're already hearing. Thank you.
No more questions? Nothing? Mr. Thomas and Mr. Gardiner, are you okay now? No more questions to the applicants? Okay, thank you. I'll move now to ask Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Wood if you have questions to ask the objectors and to the nuisance officer, please.
No questions, Chair. I'd obviously like to address some of the points that have been raised in closing, if I may, but I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Panel councillors, do you have any questions to ask the nuisance officer and the objectors? I see Councillor Ball. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think the point that you were making, Paul, as I understood it, was that there are ongoing concerns because of the slow progress at dealing with the noise issues. Would it, in your view, would it be sensible to beef up the noise condition to make it clear that there can't be any alcohol sales until the limiter's been set to the satisfaction of environmental health?
I almost don't want to make a recommendation necessarily around that, but I would say that I feel at this point we haven't had sight of the noise management plan, and I don't know the reasons for that, and I welcome to hear the reasons for that, because specifically in April there was communication around that. It's documented in the papers. Obviously, you can see that communication has happened, and I'm wondering, you know, has that noise management plan been sent somewhere and we don't know about it? I don't think it has, and I'm just wondering why we haven't had sight of it. If we've got a clear plan in place, an ambitious plan, whatever, I would like to know what it is, and I would like to have been working on it prior to this hearing with you. Instead, we're here on an adjourned hearing, and a hearing which itself was adjourned on request of the applicant, and we're now hearing about the ambitions within a plan we haven't seen. So I'm not too sure if I'm honest, where the alcohol would necessarily mitigate it. It would help reduce the concerns I have about what I feel the shift in tone around the venue has been, but it doesn't change the fundamentals. And the most fundamental is we have a building that is built like an amplifier that will amplify those sounds within it. And we need to have a clear understanding that residents living in the area won't be further disturbed by that. And I don't see that so far. But I can see Alison's got a hand up.
Thank you.
Yes, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if this report is available now, if it would be worth adjourning for 20 minutes or so to give officers the chance to read it. I don't know how long Mr. Murphy would need to assess it.
I suppose the problem is I don't know how long the report is. I don't know how specific it is to the questions I would have, and I don't think 20 minutes would do it. I would feel if it was going to be adjourned, I would want to adjourn for longer than that, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you, Alison.
I don't think. Look, it's the if it helps. Sorry to interrupt. It is the report that's been in place since 2015, which environmental health will have assessed anyway. But I can deal with the rest in closing, if I may.
Alison, do you want to suggest anything in regards to the report?
No, thank you, Chair. I wasn't clear as to whether or not it was a new report. From what Mr. Thomas has said, it sounds as though it's the same report. So in that I don't think there's much benefit in having a further adjournment.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Any further questions?
I'm okay, thank you, Councillor Backlini.
Councillor Ball?
No,
No
that's
further- Okay. Can we just now confirm if there are any conditions to be agreed or offered?
The first condition, Chair, is the noise limiter condition, which I've put in the chat. As you've
Yes.
probably also seen, and I'm sorry for not asking for your lead before I've done it, but I've just popped in the
I've seen it.
the salient points from the management report, which haven't changed, and we would say at least have worked to an extent. The other condition we would offer is that the contact number of the general manager is circulated to local residents. I'm going to put that condition into the chat right now.
Mm-hmm. Can all attendees see the messages in the chat that the solicitor, Mr. Thomas, is putting now?
Karen, just whilst people are reading those, is there anything that you can add in terms of whether the management plan will change? My understanding is, from what you told me before, is that the changes to the management plan is effectively the recalibration and the testing of the sound limiter. Is there anything else that's likely to change?
Not as far as I'm aware. But like I said, so as soon as I get the information back from the people on site today, and apologies for the delay, I think that the reason as well was that we wanted to get these people to site sooner to reassess externally our sound as well, and just ensure that everything was set, working and tested. So again, that's been part of the reason for today. I just wanted to make it right, but unfortunately, they could only get to site today.
Okay. Have you all read the chat? Okay. Paul, I see you raised your hand.
Thank you, yeah, and thank you, Alan and Karen, for that and for posting that level of detail in the chat. That's helpful. Can I just make sure I've understood this correctly as well, in terms of effectively what we're saying here is that the operations won't, of the new license won't effectively start until that exercise has taken place, with in terms of the setting of the sound limiter and a noise exercise that we undertaken by my officers with the affected residents and yourselves. Is that right?
Well, the condition would bite immediately as soon as you grant the if you grant the application today, that condition would bite immediately. Mm-hmm. The good thing about having a license in place is that, of course, you've got conditions that then apply. It's a bit of, as your legal advisor will probably tell you, it's a bit of a grey area and a nuance as to conditions in relation to regulated activity where the activity is unregulated. But the reason we have offered these as conditions, or at the very least undertakings, is that you can see that we wish to be bound by them. And at the very worst, of course, this could be the subject of a review if we didn't do what we said we were going to do.
I mean, as I say, just feedback on those. They're helpful conditions, and they would be conditions that we would be very keen to engage with you on, to make sure that they're done to everyone's satisfaction.
Well, as I said, they bite immediately. So
Yeah.
you said effectively would be able to sell alcohol without the sound limiter. I think technically yes, but if we then carried on in breach of using the license, if we started using the license tomorrow and didn't have the sound limiter set and in place, you would obviously be saying to us either you're in breach of the condition or you're in breach of what you said at the hearing, and we're going to instigate a review. So that's why I say the restriction or the undertaking bites immediately.
Thank you, Alan. And I think that was just helpful clarification for the benefit of everybody on the call as well, including I think the residents who've joined us as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Just checking now if there are any further questions in regards to what Mr. Thomas had put on the chat. No? Okay, in this case, we'll move to summing up. I will invite Paul again to come and briefly sum up, please.
Chair, thank you. I don't actually have any particular comments beyond those which I shared earlier. All I would just reiterate is it would be helpful, and hopefully we'll hear from Alan who's summing up where the confusion has been up until now around some of the engagement. I'm grateful for the enhancement of the conditions that have been posted in the chat. I think that it will be a really key part of what happens over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be making sure that these sound exercises do take place. They take place in conjunction with affected residents, that we're able to have officers on site to assess both the noise within the building itself and set that level in terms of knowing what is an acceptable level that we can hear from the gardens of residential properties and from living spaces of those residential properties. I obviously my same concerns remain around the fact that the fundamentals of the site are very challenging for any purpose that's going to involve amplified music or sound of any kind. I've obviously got that second concern that I mentioned earlier around that shift in tone in terms of who this venue is targeting. I do feel that some of the alcohol aspects of the license do make for a potential obvious growth model for a business of this kind to become far more corporate focused, to become far more adult hospitality focused, even if that's not what is in the application or is necessarily the experience to date with this particular brand. And then a final point, which I'm sure Alan will address in his summing up, is why it is we're still talking about ambitions at the point that we're at the hearing, given we've already had one adjournment. But other than that, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Gardiner and Mr. Banks, would you like to sum up briefly? Do you have anything to add?
I think Paul has sort of summarised our concerns probably perhaps better than I could. So thank you, Paul. I'm not sure I really have anything to add. Do we? No. So yeah, no. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gardiner as well. Nothing to add?
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
No. Okay. I'll invite now Mr. Thomas to sum up, please, briefly.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. It's tricky because it's a deregulated activity, but we are bending over backwards to try to deal with this issue because it has to be resolved one way or the other. I think the answer, Paul raised a very good point about what's happened in the last 3 months. I think Karen's already dealt with it, is that they couldn't get the people on site coincidentally until today. But the key to the noise management, and I think when we were talking about a new noise management plan, it really does boil down to the setting of the sound limiter by environmental health, and that effectively is the plan, which augments the plan that's already in place. It's not ideal, I admit that, but the key is the fact that we do now have controls in terms of the limiter, which will be set hopefully over the next couple of weeks, but that condition bites immediately. So we have to get our skates on, so to speak, and the proof will be in the pudding in that regard. So that will give you a control or a mechanism, notwithstanding the activity is deregulated, that if we don't do what we've said that we're going to do, then we know what's going to happen next. And the same applies to us changing into something else. You've heard what Karen said about this bit, the corporate hire, for example, mainly during daytime, and being very much an ancillary activity to the main use as a children's family venue. If that business model changed to the extent that there's crime or nuisance, we know where we're going to be back again. And we obviously, Karen touched on this too, we are a children's family venue, and we don't want it to become like a one of those football parks where people go, well, you know, the type of place. You've heard a complete and genuine a commitment to work with the residents to resolve this, and Karen's the right person to do that. Karen, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
So, Chair, in short, we've got the sword of Damocles hanging over our head in terms of the Section 80 notice. That's the overall protection, and the sound limiter will be calibrated and set by Environmental Health, I hope, over the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Those are the submissions, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before deliberation, I'd like to ask Alison, have we covered everything?
I think so, Chair, yes.
Thank you, Alison. So now the panel will now retire to deliberate together with legal advisor and clerk. We should be back, I think, maybe 1:45, around 1:45. Alison?
Yes, that sounds about right. Obviously, if it takes longer, then we can let the clerk and let the parties know.
Yeah.
I will certainly be staying on the call, sort of muted and camera off. I assume Karen will as well, but it's a matter for the other parties whether they wish to hear or whether they'll get an email from you, but I will be here.
Okay, thank you. I think now Richard is going to turn off the live feed, and you'll be put in